Weak loser awakens the strongest legendary king power after being bitten by a wolf. A long time ago, there were two countries, Zal and Aquafa, and they got into this massive war that lasted for ages. After a lot of fighting, Zal came out on top, and they took over Aquafa. But Zal couldn't find a way to conquer one place, the Fire Horse territory. It was like the home turf of black wolves called the Mitchell. Now, these Mitchell wolves were pretty unique because they had something called black wolf fever, and that made Zal decide to leave them be. So, while Zal ruled over the rest of Aquafa, the Mitchell and their territory stayed free. The people of Aquafa, though, weren't as lucky. Some of them, including the soldiers who fought hard in the war, ended up as slaves in the salt mines. The king of Aquafa had to say he was loyal to Zal and do everything to keep his people safe, but secretly, not everyone was happy about it. One of those not-so-happy folks was Ofen, the chief of the Mitchell. He wanted to fight back against Zal's rule, so he gave his wolves the command to go wild. Their mission was to attack the salt mines and anyone from Zal. In those salt mines was a guy named Van. He used to be a soldier, fought bravely for Aquafa, and somehow survived. But then, he got stuck as a slave in the salt mines. Even though Van looked tough and strong, he was actually a really nice guy. He always lent a helping hand to those who needed it. But one day, when the wolves stormed into the mines to attack everyone, Van found himself stuck in his cell, chained by the neck to the wall. From his cell, he watched as a lady with a baby on her back tried to share some food. But oops, it spilled on the floor. Then chaos broke out. The wolves started attacking the guards and slaves, including the woman on her way back. Suddenly, one of the wolves showed up carrying a kid in its mouth. When Van saw the kid bleeding, he couldn't just sit there. He went into action, attacking the wolf from his cage and managing to make it drop the kid. But here's the tough part. The chain around Van's neck started strangling him as he struggled to deal with the wolf. The wolf jumped back, bit Van's right arm, and pulled him against the bars. The chain kept tightening until Van collapsed. Surprisingly, when he fell, the chain broke, and the wolf had to let go. After the wolf disappeared into the darkness, Van slowly lost consciousness. He later wakes up from a dream that haunted him, the memory of losing his wife and son to a terrible fever before he went off to war. In the dream, they dissolved into an orb of light, and he reached out, grabbing it with his right hand. The light flowed into his hand, then through his veins, like it was his blood. As he opened his eyes, he was met with the sight of the kid he had saved. Yuna. She was tugging at his chain, tears streaming down her face. Overwhelmed with emotion, Van couldn't help but cry too. He reached out and gently touched her face. Soon after, a determined spark ignited in Van. He decided to break free from his cell. With all his might, he pushed out one of the logs imprisoning him. In a surprising turn of events, a light suddenly glowed from the bite wound on his right arm. The light traveled down to his hand and into the log, producing bubbles as if the log was boiling from the inside. Then, it exploded, leaving both Van and Yuna astonished. Taking Yuna on his back, Van set out to find a way out. Fortunately, he stumbled upon a rope ladder leading outside of the hole where he was confined. Hope surged within him as he realized there might be a chance to escape with Yuna. Upon emerging from the mines, Van and Yuna were met with a devastating scene. The lifeless bodies of those attacked by the wolves lay scattered on the ground. They seemed to be the sole survivors of the brutal assault. Determined to start anew, Van guided Yuna to her home to gather essentials for their journey, only for Yuna to realize that her parents were no longer there. Continuing their journey through the night, something swiftly moved behind Van. His initial instinct was to pursue it with the intent to eliminate the threat, but as he caught up, he discovered it was a deer, much like the one he rode during the war. This unexpected encounter brought a glimmer of familiarity and warmth. Meanwhile, in the city of Zal, Dr. Hozel arrived at the mines to assist those affected by the Mitchell. He inspected the disease, hoping to aid the bitten emperor. Taking him into the mines for a more thorough examination, they encountered SAE, a tracker sent in earlier. SAE reported that a slave named Van had managed to escape despite being bitten by the wolves. Hozel speculated that Van might be immune to the disease, and his blood could hold the key to creating a cure. Determined to find Van, they dispatched SAE on a mission. As Van rode the deer, he encountered a man named Toma with a leg injury from a horse accident. Toma claimed the deer was his, being a breeder. Despite the initial tension, Van decided to help Toma and took him back to his village in the countryside. The villagers welcomed Van and Yuna, assuming her to be his daughter. Van, not correcting them, was prepared to embrace the role of a father once again. The next day, Van ventured into the forest to harvest ashami, a clover weed that the deer fed on, while Yuna woke up, eager to search for him. As Van diligently worked in the forest, the bite wound on his arm began to glow and burned beneath his clothes. The light intensified, filling his entire body and heart until the pain overwhelmed him, causing him to collapse onto the forest floor. When he opened his eyes, he was initially greeted by the image of his late son. but upon closer inspection, it was Yuna running up to him. Together, they collected ashimi and Van ground it up for dye and sent to coat the ropes. Using these ropes, he fashioned a fence for the deer enclosure. With a bit of bravery, he entered with one of the supposedly aggressive deer, and, through a process of patience and understanding, tamed it. Riding the deer, he made Toma and the others ecstatic. As night fell, he rested beside Yuna, who had grown close to him, and the sense of being a father began to settle within him once more. The next day, the village men embarked on a boar hunt, chasing it toward Van so he could take the shot with his arrow. Yuna and her newfound friend hid nearby. When the boar approached, Yuna, inspired by Van's earlier deer taming, jumped in front of it but lacked the ability to whistle as he did. The boar charged straight for her. In a swift move, Van intervened, stopping the boar with his glowing right hand. A blue light surged through his hand into the boar, creating a wave that bent the air around it, instantly bringing it down. The other men witnessed this miraculous event with excitement, reminiscent of the first time Van's powers revealed themselves. They returned home, and the women cheered for the fresh meat. Life for Van and Yuna flowed smoothly, peacefully, and joyfully as they seamlessly assimilated into village life. They celebrated the birth of a new deer, reveling in the joy until they could no longer. However, Van, still gazing at the mountains at night, couldn't help but wonder if this peace would last. In the following days, he took Yuna on a ride atop his deer, teaching her about the wonders of the wild and promising to make her a whistle one day. Sae, after finally locating Van and Yuna, observed them from a distance without saying a word. She took a moment to drink some water, silently witnessing their return to the village. In the quiet of the night, Van was plagued by a nightmare. He dreamt of being found by the previous king of the Mitchell, who cruelly took Yuna from him. Upon waking, he discovered Yuna safe and sound beside him, prompting him to hold her tightly. The next morning, while preparing firewood, a man on horseback approached the village. Van rushed to help, only to discover that the man was infected with the disease and fell off his horse, meeting his tragic end. The villagers solemnly burned the body. News of Van's whereabouts reached Dr. Hozel, who prepared to head there. As the village elder recited the history of Zal and Aquafa, Van heard the sounds of the deer and went outside to inspect, leaving Yuna with the others. To his surprise, he found the village surrounded by Aquafa's royal guards. Van, without hesitation, demanded they leave the villagers alone, assuring compliance. Yuna, waking up, ran outside in search of her father. A guard tried to touch Van, but he subdued him instantly. Another guard attempted to intervene, but Van's arm began to glow upon contact with the spear. A strange boiling simulation occurred, causing the spear to explode slightly, startling those around. Van walked forward without saying goodbye to Yuna. Before the Aquafa men could shoot at him, the black wolves arrived and encircled Van and the guards. His hand and chest started to glow. Yuna ran towards him, but she got enveloped by the dark vapor surrounding the wolves, glowing a bright red. The situation took an unexpected turn, leaving everyone in suspense. Van, after collapsing, is awakened by the sound of the deer. To his horror, he discovers that the wolves have taken Yuna and are rapidly moving away with her. As one of the wolves attempts to attack a Zolian woman, Yuna instinctively sends a red string to stop the wolf and bring it back to the pack. Determined to rescue Yuna, Van chases after the pack, with the villagers sending the deer with his weapons to aid him. Mounting the deer, he prepares to use his arrows to intervene, all the while being pursued by the Aquafa men. Van catches up to the pack, maneuvering between the wolves to reach Yuna. However, his attempt to grab her is abruptly halted by Sae, who shoots an arrow into his chest. Van tumbles to the ground, and the wolves successfully escape. Sae, not finished, advances on him with a dagger, but Van skillfully evades her attacks, desperately trying to continue his pursuit of Yuna. Hozel arrives to intervene, and before any further action can take place, Van collapses due to significant blood loss. Hozel instructs his assistant to divert the guards, as they plan to kill Van to perpetuate the mutual havoc. In the midst of unconsciousness, Van has a dream where he sees his late wife and son, along with the old king of the Mitchell. The king reveals to him the nature of his new power, connecting him to the life around him, and urges him to come and find him. The dream leaves Van with a sense of mystery and purpose as his journey takes an unexpected turn. Undeterred by his injuries, Van rides on the deer to find Yuna. Hozel attempts to stop him by striking a deal. He offers to accompany Van as his personal doctor in exchange for obtaining his blood to create a cure. Despite initial reluctance, Van agrees, and Sae is instructed to lead the way to find Yuna, even though her original intention was to kill Van. As the journey progresses, they come to a resting point, and Sae goes out to hunt for food. During this time, Hozel explains to Van the reason behind needing his blood. However, Van is skeptical, believing that the disease inside him is what's keeping him alive, and he doubts the effectiveness of his blood in creating a cure. The journey continues, and Hozel, curious about Yuna's significance, inquires about her. Van reveals that she is his daughter, evoking a sense of compassion from Sae. The next morning, in a deeper part of the forest, Van lies on the ground while the deer feed on Ashimi. He hears the voice of the old wolf king, who tells him about his new power. In his vision, he sees a possessed Yuna floating above and abruptly wakes up. The journey presses on, leading them to a village where they learn more about the war and the hardships faced by the villagers. Taking shelter in a cave from the rain, Van contemplates why he survived the fever. Hozel narrates the unique aspect of the Mitchell, how it kills Zolians but not Aquaphis, leaving both of them curious about the reason. Their journey faces another pause as they discover that the land once belonging to the Mitchell has been taken over by Zal. A massive balloon marks the Zal territory, signaling their determination to persist even in the face of danger. The unfolding mysteries and challenges continue to shape the path of Van, Hozel, and Sae as they pursue their intertwined destinies. As they pass through fog-covered and muddy woods, the group is attacked by people on stilts. Sae skillfully manages to take them down while Van checks on Hozel, who was shot during the encounter. Sae tries to get answers from the attackers, who happen to be Aquaphis like them, but the people run away. Continuing their journey, they arrive at a hot spring to wash off the mud. In this serene setting, Hozel curiously asks Van about Yuna. Van passionately describes her childlike behavior, leaving him smiling to himself and missing her deeply. In the early morning, Sae learns from Van that Yuna is not his biological daughter. This revelation prompts her to cut the journey short, providing them with directions to Fire Horse territory where Yuna is located. Van, along with Hozel, continues the journey and eventually reaches their destination. Entering through a tunnel, Van notices the glowing roots along the walls, reminiscent of the familiar blue light. The light extends from his right arm to his chest as he reaches the end of the tunnel. However, Hozel is abducted while following behind. Van encounters Ofen, who invites him in. Passing through bushes, they enter a breathtaking, lush scene. Ofen reveals that this beauty will vanish when Zal invades. He urges Van to ally with him, reclaim their freedom, and free the deers inhabiting the land alongside the wolves. Meanwhile, Hozel, awakened by Yuna, tends to patients with the disease. He learns that the patients, despite being Aquaphis, are not immune. Bitten intentionally, they sought to become the Wolf King to lead the Mitchell against Zal, resulting in a backfire. Realizing that Van is the chosen one to become the king, ascending to the top of the stairs, Van meets the old king residing inside a tree, and is offered the opportunity to become the king of the Mitchell. Despite Hozel's objections, Van accepts the invitation and encounters the king and Yuna. The king asks Van to accept the duty to lead the Mitchell and become king, but he declines, not wanting Yuna to be involved in such a fate. As a result, the tree begins to dry up and age. Van takes Yuna in his arms and brings her down to reunite with Hozel. Despite his refusal to become king, Hozel draws the blood he needs from Van, with Yuna watching. Suddenly, lightning strikes down the tree, breaking it apart, and the roots burst through the ground. Dark vapor surrounds all of them. Van becomes possessed by the darkness of the Mitchell. After the turmoil, he grabs Hozel by the neck, but to everyone's surprise, Hozel doesn't resist. In this moment of darkness, Van's late wife and son appear to him, giving him the strength to remember himself. They walk away into the light, and Van regains his senses, releasing his grip on Hozel. Realizing his mistake, he apologizes immediately. One of the wolves approaches Yuna, who is also possessed by the disease. She climbs onto the wolf, and together they take off, ready for war. Van, now back on his deer, chases after them. Arriving at the entrance, he witnesses the Zolians, parked and ready to invade the territory, being ambushed by Ofen and his men. Yuna follows the pack, and Van, with no other choice, pursues them. Meanwhile, Hozel makes a breakthrough in his study of Van's blood, discovering an antibody provided by the Ashimi, which Van obtained from consuming deer milk. Yuna charges toward the Emperor, ready to murder him. Before she can get any closer, Van appears and blocks the attack, using the same flow of light within him to strike the wolves. They stop, and Van calls Yuna to come to him. However, Ofen, who had been shot, wakes up and instructs her to run to the forest, killing every Zolian with the disease. Ofen collapses and passes away. The possessed Yuna follows Ofen's command, running into the forest with her pack of wolves. Van persists in his chase, and when the Aquafa King tries to have him shot, Sae appears to defend him, allowing Van to disappear into the forest behind the pack. Van continues to pursue Yuna until he catches up to her and blocks their way. His light burns brightly as he walks toward her, growing with each step. By the time he reaches her, the light eradicates the darkness from the wolves, dispelling the energy of hatred and war, bringing Yuna back to herself. He hugs her and tells her that everyone in their village is waiting for her, gifting her the whistle he made on his journey. Van gets on his deer and makes his way between the wolves, leaving Yuna behind despite her desire to come with him. The wolves follow him. Yuna runs after Van, calling for him to take her with him, but it falls on deaf ears. Sai arrives, picks her up, and she asks when Van will come back but receives no answer. While rushing to meet the Emperor and share his findings on the cure, Hozel encounters Van going the opposite way as a light, and he smiles to himself. Yuna returns to the village with Sai, and they live there happily. After a long time, Yuna sees some wolves on a cliff overlooking her way. She brings out the whistle from Van and blows it, and a deer appears. Yuna's face lights up at the sight of her father's return. The journey comes full circle, ending with the reunion of father and daughter. Watch this next video. See you on the next one.